You are watching Raptors Today. Now, the Raptors have not been in Scotiabank Arena, where we are, of course, in a while because they're still completing their West Coast road trip. I'm Savanna Hamilton alongside Paul Jones and Sherman Hamilton. The squad is back. We got Amy Audibert joining us a little bit later on, but we're going to break down a few of the past games from the past week. So, Sherman, I'm going to start with you because, you know, we saw the Jazz game. The Raptors, they shot 41%. Meanwhile, the Jazz, they shot 55%. Pretty impressive night for the team. But, you know, was it just one of those games for the Jazz where, you know, the basketball rim looked like an ocean, or was it a bad game for the Raptors? It just wasn't falling.
Well, maybe a combination of both when you think about it. The Jazz shot the ball so well, as you said, over 55% from the floor. But you look at some key players like Rudy Gobert. He doesn't miss a shot.
No.
The Raptors were severely outscored bench-wise, 57-30. Rudy Gay came off the bench. An old Raptor got dusted off, and he came out and did a great job. And I just thought that there was not enough punch. Gary Trent had a very good game in scoring. Fred VanVleet did what he could do, but the field goal percentages weren't there. And I really think that that was a game where if you had an injection of Pascal maybe offensively, that could have helped out. Obviously, no OG Anunoby, you're struggling to fill that void. So a lot of moving parts there, but there's no question Utah played their brand of basketball, and the Raptors didn't present enough resistance, hence them shooting over 55%.
We did talk about Rudy Gobert in our preview and saying that he could have been a problem, and he lived up to that potential. So, you know, on one hand, it's also a learning experience for the Raptors and seeing what they need to do in order to go forward. But, you know, you touched on something. Gary Trent Jr., he had 31 points in 33 minutes, Jonesy. Break down what you saw for him that night.
Well, look, he's grown in leaps and bounds coming to Toronto. And some of that is just getting a chance to play in the system and learning the system. Had a chance to, you know, work with the coaches in the break. I won't even call it a summer break, just the short off season. But, you know, he's in a system now where when he was in Portland, he had to play basically in the shadow of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. I love the fact that he lets the game come to him. He doesn't force things. He has that ability on occasion to break you down and to create for others. But he's very good in drifting into spots, the shots finding him, and when they do find him, he's ready to shoot. I thought he did a terrific job. You know, he was 12 of 18 that night, did not miss a shot inside the arc, made 7 shots inside the arc, 5 shots outside the arc. I like his pacing. I like his ability, as I said, to just kind of play the game and let it come to him on the offensive end. And we've seen what he's done defensively in this Nick Nurse system. He's active. His hands are active. He gives multiple efforts. He's a guy that has really kind of established himself as one of the key pieces in the starting rotation.
But, you know, somebody that stood out to me also in the Kings game, let's move on a little bit now, was Pascal Siakam. You know, he had a bit of a rough showing, as we just kind of touched on briefly.
Understatement.
During the Jazz game, he had 4 points, but he did have a big comeback in the Kings game. What did you see from him?
Well, the numbers are ridiculous. Pascal took 2 less shots and scored 28 more points in that game against the Kings. So obviously he came out early. He was aggressive. He really understood. And the really good players know that you have a bad game. How do you bounce back? How do you come back the next night, the next opportunity, and shake it off? Do you let it linger? No lingering with Pascal. He came out aggressively. He was knocking down shots. He got to the basket. We saw a fluidity in Pascal's movement, which is something that we haven't seen in a while. And I like the fact that his ability to run the floor, play in space, really compromise the team in terms of attacking off the dribble, getting players to back up, then scoring. He just did a lot of good things. And the third quarter, put it to work. Coming out of halftime, just went to work, put his team on his back and said, let's go. That's the kind of leadership you want to see from Pascal.
Absolutely. You know, when I thought about the Kings game, Jonesy, that the Raptors were so in control. They really threw the first punch, and not just, you know, in a wild, aggressive way. It was very much methodic. It was rhythmic. I saw that they really had a tempo to the game. What did you see from the defensive end? Because this is actually one of their best defensive games.
Well, you know, the tempo helps on the defensive end. Unfortunately, at times, guys' defense is impacted by how well the offense is going, and Toronto had their offense going. But, you know, you talked about 89 points, best defensive game, fewest points allowed all season. And then you had 5 guys on a string. They were helping. Their hands were active. They were turning Sacramento over, and they really went after the main players on the Kings. Got to the point where in the fourth quarter, Luke Walton, in what turned out to be his last game as the Kings head coach, did not even reinsert De'Aaron Fox. So the Raptors had them totally flummoxed, and Luke Walton was searching for other combinations to try and get them back into it. So give Toronto credit, bouncing back after a very difficult night in Utah, back-to-back. Remember, they traveled all night and were playing, second game of the back-to-back. And Sherm talked about the third quarter. Normally in the third quarter, that's when your legs hit you. Well, they were determined. Pascal leading the offense, and the defense really ramped up. Nick Nurse doing things to make sure that defense stayed energized.
Absolutely. You said 5 guys on a string. That's the type of basketball that I love watching. I don't know what you guys. Now to break down the Golden State Warriors game against the Raptors is Amy Audibert. We're going to look specifically at defense. Now, Amy, we're going to talk a little bit boxing, one action that we saw against Steph Curry. Amy, do you think that Steph has this game circled in his calendar because of how tough the Raptors defense is?
Hey, Sav, yeah, it's really an interesting question because he did only have 12 points on 2 of 10 from shooting from the field, but he got to the line 7 times. Of course, good players know when the shot's not falling, they can attack. And it's interesting because Steve Kerr pregame said Freddie was a bulldog defensively, and Freddie talks about loving this matchup because he acknowledges that Steph Curry is one of the best of all time. And I think we're getting past the point of even debating that maybe he is the best shooter that this game has ever seen. But really, Steph Curry, he's won rings, and he knows that this team early on, they look like they have the potential to do it again. So I don't think he comes into this game saying it's not going to be his night, but I think he's confident in understanding that he can make plays and guys around him on his team can score too. So the Raptors did a great job on Steph, but really good teams have other guys that can step up and score too.
Now, Amy, do you think that the Raptors' game plan of having to shut down Steph Curry but then have the rest of the team score really was the right approach in this scenario? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, the Golden State Warriors, they shot the lights out.
And particularly, let's talk about Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins, who combined for 14 threes and 65 points for the Golden State Warriors tonight. So they were absolutely fantastic. But as a whole, Golden State averages about 15 threes per game. They made 22 tonight. They are in complete sync in terms of finding what they want offensively. The other thing the Warriors do a great job is they work the shot clock down to last minute. So if you're a half step slow, if you are a little behind on anticipating the next pass, they make you pay, and that's what the Raptors saw a little bit of tonight.
Thank you so much, Amy. We're going to head over to some top moments of the Raptors season so far, edited by our man Akeem.
Speed behind the back, showing skills. Gary Trent finds Pascal. Achua attacking and a slam dunk. Barnes rips it. Achua runs to the rim, trailer. Between the legs, makes the move, lets it fly.
We're now going to hear from head coach Nick Nurse along with the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably got on us in the first 4 or 5 minutes, Doug. I mean, I think from the rest of the way we played it pretty even. You're right. We did cut it down a couple times, and we didn't keep it that close those couple times. Like we got it to 9, I believe, and then all of a sudden it was like boom, 18 again really quickly. So it wasn't a lot of back and forth at 9, 10, 11 most of the times when we cut it back to there. But, I mean, I thought we executed a bunch of stuff really well, at both ends. I didn't think we finished at the rim very well, right? I think we left a lot of points on the board at the rim. And, we made some really good, did a lot of really good work on Curry, obviously, but made a few mistakes in our rotations out as well. And they made a lot of shots, too, some of those guys. Well, I got to look at the tape tonight, but I think for the most part, Doug, we were a couple things. I think a couple times we were a little slow getting out there when we probably should have anticipated getting out there a little sooner. A couple times the ball went to the wing first, and we ran really hard to the wing instead of kind of doing the technique that we use for that. So that's a couple. And then a couple times I thought we ran them off unnecessarily, like we were there too soon and we ran right past them when we probably could have just sat down and guarded them. And then, we went past them and then they were into another side and probably ended up shooting it in the other corner, right? But yeah, we got to really, again, I thought we did a great job on Curry. I think our rotations, we need to look at them, but I think we're making some progress on some of this stuff as far as, some of the things we want to do. No, it's okay. I mean, I think that there's a little more than that plays into it, Doug. I think when you're really experienced, you kind of can even decide who you'd rather have shoot it, right? So depending on which guy it is, where, right? So sometimes you'll rotate hard to one guy and not to another, and take your chances based on who that is and percentages. And then a lot of times you're trying to, what they call stunt up to the wing, and then retreat back to the corner to try to break the rhythm of that pass or the rhythm of that shot. If you stunt and you recover back to the corner, then the wing guy ends up shooting it, and hopefully you take his rhythm out, or by then somebody else is coming, to give him some kind of contest. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sit here and say that's an excuse, the experience, but the reps need to be there, right? They need to get the feel of how fast the ball's moving out of some of those double teams, and I already said the word, but anticipating kind of where it's going, because you can kind of anticipate that sometimes, and if you're a half count earlier when you take off leaving the lane, you're going to be there a half second sooner, and that's usually the difference, right? It's usually that little bit of anticipation and decision making.
I think it's both. Just being now, I was able to see the game up close. Not actually playing the games, but being in the arena and having, just being up close, and I'm been able to see a lot of things, and a lot of things that I couldn't see while I was out there, and that's one of the things that I say I took from being out, and also my shoulder feeling better, of course. I mean, we try to come in, play with a lot of energy, around up and down the floor. The bench coming in were a lot younger, so we come in a lot more, try to pick up the pace of the game, play fast, transition, play defense, get out and run, and just basically just bring a lot of energy to the game and to the team.
My welcome to the NBA moment was, I was with the Celtics, obviously, and our season opener was actually here against the Toronto Raptors. And before we took off, Rick Pitino called me in his office and he said, hey, you had a really good camp, but unfortunately we can't find minutes for you. You're probably not going to play for the season, but just stay ready. And I was just happy to be in the NBA at this time. So game day, I'm getting my 2-hour nap. My hotel room rang a couple times. I picked it up, and it's Rick Pitino. And he said, hey, this is Pitino. Just want to let you know you're starting tonight, and you got Vince Carter. I don't know, I blocked the shot. He was still really good, but I think as long as we got the win, that was the most important thing. I know one of the things I always tell the guys that I'm working with is, hey, I'm going to get in the trenches with you. You're not going to always like what I have to say. I feel like I have to tell you the truth. That truth, you can't grow. You can't grow if you don't know. You got to know the things that you're working on, and sometimes you got to have those candid conversations with players, but they know that it's come from a good place. You really have to be intentional, about just letting these guys know that you care. It's that old adage, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so that's one of the values I try to live by as a coach, and so far, it's served me well. Growing up, I was always in sports, and basketball was my number one sport, and I would always bounce things off my father, and I would just call him and hey, the coach is not playing me, or this happened, and he never gave me advice on basketball, never. He was a minister, and so he would always say, how's your spiritual life? Every time. Sometimes it used to drive me crazy. It's I'm like, Dad, don't have nothing to do with this guy's doing this and they not passing me the ball. And he would say, how's your spiritual life, son? it didn't take me until I got older and having my kids of my own that I realized what he was saying. You know, if I was okay on the inside, I would be okay on the outside. And that's one of the lessons I try to teach my kids. So make sure you're okay first. You know, you're a parent first. You know, your coaching is your job and your profession, but as a parent, like any parent, you just want to be there and show your support. You want to be out in the crowd and cheer and stand up and yell and say, go son or go daughter, you know, and just have that support in person is tough with our profession. And that's just one of the sacrifices. But thank God for technology. You know, being in Toronto, man, I've subscribed to almost everything you could think of to get those games. And I'll text them before the game, say, hey, knock it out the park. And after the game, you know, I try to give them a word of encouragement. And it's tough, man. Like, it's a lot more pressure. I feel like my youngest son is at Duke. Like, I wasn't that good to go to Duke. You know what I mean? You're talking about the cream of the crop. So I know what I was feeling at 18 years old. So I can't imagine how he's feeling. Aubrey's at UConn. Like, I was not that good, you know? So sometimes I tell him, hey, I don't know what to tell you other than that, keep working. You know, Allen, you know, he's trying to fight his way in the G League, and I'll just tell him, keep your nose clean, keep your head down, and keep working. That's all you can control. So those are lessons I pass on to my kids. You know, it doesn't matter where you start. You know, I always tell them it doesn't matter how you start. You may start on the bench because your opportunity's gonna come. In sports, it always comes, especially in team sports. They're gonna call your number, and then it's up to you to be ready.
Welcome back to Raptors Today. Now, a guy that was severely missed over this past couple of games has been OG Anunoby.
Yes.
He had a hip pointer injury, and I'm not going to act as if I knew exactly what that was right away. I had to Google it and then refer to you guys a little bit. But break it down. It's a hip injury. It's a bruise on your top of your hip, right?
I don't know if it's a bruise, but it's painful. I mean, I've had one, and it hurts a lot. But obviously, OG severely missed when you talk about the Raptors and a long road trip like this. You know, you think about the Utah game, OG Anunoby being able to lock horns with a guy like Donovan Mitchell, Royce O'Neal, who had a good game as well. Rudy Gay came off the bench, really was good for Utah. You know, you insert OG into those type of situations and say, slow that guy down. And he's usually able to do that. So you clearly miss him. And then offensively, you know, in that game as well, Pascal doesn't play as well. Maybe OG's in that game. All of a sudden he finds that offense and he kind of lifts the team up. So you just miss him on so many levels, and you realize that matchup after matchup, and then you fast forward to that Golden State game. How much could you have used him in that game? I mean, everything that he brings to the floor. So you're really understanding how much work Pascal has put in to put himself in a position where he is needed that much for his team to have success. You tip your hat to him. It's unfortunate that he's not there, though.
Yeah, I know. And OG's contribution would have been huge in the Golden State Warriors game. Of course, Pascal Siakam did step up for the team, I thought, and made his contributions down the stretch. But, you know, OG, you can't replace 20 points plus a game. You can't replace his defense, his 3 in defense. But, you know, Jonesy, let's talk about a guy who hasn't actually seen the floor yet this season, but apparently he's going to be a bit more aggressive when he does see the floor. That's Yuta Watanabe.
Well, he's been dying to play. And, you know, I look at the kind of evolution of Utah from last year. He came in last year and he only took shots that came to him and presented themselves to him. He did a great job at the defensive end. He was the quintessential energy player. Deflection, steals, getting out and running, making easy baskets on the break. And then Nick Nurse said, you know what? You're knocking down some threes. It's okay to start taking those. And I just thought he did a nice job of not stepping out of his lane and doing what he was asked. And once he got the green light and he got a little success, now he's looking for more. So hence you hear him talking about wanting to be more aggressive. And he fits with the Raptors' profile, his length, his athleticism, turnovers, deflections, getting out on the break and making threes. So it'll be nice to get him back. A word of caution, though, to the fans. When he comes back, he's jumping on a moving train, 20 games in. He hasn't had a training camp, so you're going to have to give him some time.
Well, I'll just lead from right there. We're 20 games in. We are about 20% into the season right now. I hopped on, the NBA app, and I was looking at the standings this morning, and Raptors are currently sitting at number 12, but take into consideration that the difference between 12 and 5 is about 2.5 games.
Yeah.
That's a world of a difference. That could change any time. Sure.
Absolutely, it can. And you think about it, this early in the season, teams are still forming and rounding out. They don't really know who they're going to be yet. And you're the Raptors. Teams across the league are facing injuries, guys in and out of the lineup. So there's a lot to be done. And, I'm not surprised at where the Raptors are. I think they're going to get better as the season rolls on, the healthier they get. But understanding that this is a process and it's a long season. And right now, some teams are doing well that aren't going to be there when the dust settles. So you look at that and you think about the Raptors, how good they can be when everybody's in the lineup with the style that they play, and get some reps. I mean, get some time together. That's the key thing. And once they get to that point, then we can make a real assessment on who they are.
Yeah, Sherman, I agree. I mean, early in the season, teams that would kind of let go of the rope in March and April, they're not letting go right now because they still see hope. And you look at the East, you can basically say, and even not so much looking down at Orlando and Detroit, but you got 13 teams fighting for 10 spots. And I always thought best case scenario for the Raptors would be to secure one of those top 6 spots, those definitive playoff spots. And at worst, I see them in the play-in. And it's early. It is early. They are coming together. We've already seen a 5-game winning streak from them with injuries. I think they need some time to get everybody healthy, get some time to put it together, get some time to practice and understand each other. I think they're going to be fine.
Absolutely. I am impressed. I will say this, with former Toronto Raptor DeMar DeRozan, what he's doing with the Bulls right now is very impressive. They're sitting top of the East, tied with Brooklyn right now. And you mentioned when the dust settles with the other teams. I'm very curious where the dust will settle with the Washington Wizards. But that is to be determined right now. Ahead of us, November 24th at Memphis. The Raptors will be playing them on the road. You can watch the game at 8 p.m. on TSN and also listen to it on TSN as well. Thank you for watching another episode of Raptors Today. I'm Savanna Hamilton, Sherman Hamilton, Paul Jones, Jake, Matt, and our editor, of course, behind the scenes. Thank you for watching.